My name is Deborah Buss. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how I was forgotten, humiliated, discarded, and how I rose in silence, only to return with more power and grace than they ever imagined I could hold. It was my father's funeral. The day I thought might finally bring my fractured family together, or at the very least, offer a brief moment of decency, of shared humanity. Instead, it became a showcase for my sister Madison's cruelty. And the moment everything changed. The chapel smelled like lilies and old wood. The kind of scent that clings to your skin. My black dress was simple, modest, chosen with care, not for show. I walked through the doors quietly, unnoticed at first. The same way I had entered every family event since I was old enough to realize I was never the one they were waiting for. Madison was already there, naturally. She was in the front row, a designer black coat hugging her figure like it had been tailored for mourning. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and her heels clicked as she moved from person to person, accepting condolences with the kind of grace reserved for actresses and politicians. She looked like a widow, not a daughter. I hadn't spoken to her in over 5 years. Not since she took Nathan from me. Or rather, since he chose her over me. And she let it happen without a flicker of guilt. At the time, I had thought the heartbreak would destroy me. I had left home, started a new life, one where no one knew me as Madison's little sister. I thought I had made peace with that chapter being closed. But that day, standing in the shadows of my father's funeral, I realized the chapter wasn't closed. It was waiting for one last act. "Deborah," she said, her voice loud enough for half the room to hear. She walked toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You actually came." There was a hush in the room. Heads turned. Her words hung in the air like an accusation. "Of course I did," I replied softly. "He was my father too." She arched a brow. "Right. Of course." Then, as if to ensure no one missed the message, she added with a tilt of her head, "You look different. I barely recognized you. I guess some people grieve in sweatshop dresses." There it was. Knife. A few people chuckled politely, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. Smiled steady. Because I had prepared for this. But before I could reply, there was movement behind me. A tall man stepped forward. He wore a fitted black suit and carried an unmistakable air of authority. His hand found mine, gently but confidently. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" he asked. Madison's eyes widened, just slightly. She scanned his face, then looked down at the subtle but unmistakable platinum band on his finger. And the matching one on mine. "This is my husband," I said. "Jonathan." He turned and offered her a polite nod. "You must be Madison. Deborah's told me stories." There was something in the way he said that, calm, cool, with a layer of unspoken truth beneath it, that made Madison blink just once and falter. And just like that, the spotlight shifted. Eyes that had once glossed over me now lingered with curiosity. Madison's smile cracked just a little. I could feel her recalibrating, trying to figure out who this man beside me was, what he meant, and more importantly, how I, the forgotten sister, had landed someone like him. We took our seats quietly, a few rows behind the family. I didn't need to be in the front. I wasn't here for appearances. I was here to say goodbye, even if my father had never really said hello. As the eulogy began, my mind drifted back to all the years I had tried to win his love, to be noticed. I remembered the science fair when I was 12, when I built a solar-powered eco-home and won first place out of 24 students. I came home clutching the medal like a treasure. My hands shook as I showed it to my mother. But Madison was dancing in the living room, describing how the teacher said she had natural rhythm. My mother didn't even look at my project. "That's nice, honey," she said. "Was it a tough competition?" And my father, he didn't even look up from the paper. Just nodded as if that counted as encouragement. Had been like that my whole life. Madison was the sun. I was the shadow cast by her light. Even at dinner parties our relatives would ask, "So Madison, what are you up to now?" I could be standing right beside them. holding a full scholarship letter, a dean's list certificate, an acceptance into a photography exhibit. It didn't matter. If Madison was there, I was invisible. So I stopped trying. Left. I started working at a diner, saving every cent. I went to night school, took photography classes, built a portfolio. And then one rainy evening I met Jonathan. He was sitting alone in the corner booth, hunched over a laptop. His coffee had gone cold. "You look like a man who's about to throw that thing across the room," I said, setting down a fresh cup. He looked up at me, and he really looked. Not through me. Not past me. Me. Talk. And kept talking. And slowly, the walls I had built to survive began to fall. He wasn't flashy. He didn't brag. But I would learn that he was building something real, a company focused on urban redevelopment. He believed in giving second chances to forgotten places. Forgotten people. Like me. He saw in me what no one else had. And when he asked me to marry him, it wasn't in front of some crowd. It was on a rooftop, under a sky streaked with gold and pink. Just us. Just love. Now, sitting beside him at my father's funeral, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I had stopped needing their approval. I had built my own light. But Madison wasn't done. After the service, as people slowly began to trickle out, Madison pulled me aside near the back of the chapel. "So," she said, arms crossed, voice low. "Married now. To a man who clearly doesn't know what he's gotten himself into." I tilted my head. "You always did hate when I was happy." "Oh, Deborah. You think this is happiness?" she sneered. "Let's see how long that lasts once he sees the real you." I stepped closer. "Funny. The real me built a career, a life, and a marriage without having to steal someone else's. Can you say the same?" Her face paled. For the first time in years, Madison had no words. And that was just the beginning. The days following the funeral were quiet, but not peaceful. Not for me, and certainly not for Madison. She had always been a master of performance. In the past, she would have used that day to elevate her image, play the grieving daughter, soak in sympathy, and remind everyone she was the center of the family universe. But something was different now. Because this time I wasn't alone. This time they saw me. After the ceremony, Jonathan and I returned to our hotel, a quiet boutique suite tucked away in the city center. He poured me a glass of wine while I changed out of my dress, my hands still trembling slightly from the confrontation with Madison. "She's rattled," he said, handing me the glass. "And not just because of your father." I nodded slowly, sinking onto the sofa. "She's losing control. And she doesn't know how to live without it." I thought back to our childhood. Even when we were kids, Madison had this gravitational pull. My parents weren't even aware they orbited her. She would cry and the world would halt. She'd laugh and everyone in the room would chase the sound like it was music. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the observer, the background, until I wasn't. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, not with anger but with questions. Why had I been so disposable to my own parents? How could a family love one child so loudly and forget the other so completely? I got up and stepped onto the hotel balcony. The city was still awake, humming beneath a blanket of orange light. I clutched my camera, an old habit, and began to take pictures. Shadows of buildings, neon signs reflecting in puddles, a couple arguing softly under a lamppost. Life unfiltered. That was when I decided I would go back. Not for them. For me. I had spent my entire life avoiding the home that had never welcomed me. But now, with Jonathan by my side and with my name, my own name, beginning to gain recognition in the photography world, I wanted to see it all one last time. Not out of longing, but to let go. So I returned. The Bus family home was still the same. Too big, too cold. A beige monument to appearances. My mother opened the door with visible surprise. She wasn't dressed in black anymore, but her grief hadn't softened her features. "Deborah," she said stiffly. "You're back." "I came to check on things," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Madison wasn't home. My mother motioned for me to sit, but I remained standing. I heard about the estate, I said. My mother blinked. What about it? Lydia told me. Madison is contesting the will. She pressed her lips together. Madison believes she deserves more. She was closer to your father. I laughed under my breath. She was never closer. She was just louder. There was a pause. My mother looked old. Not in the wrinkled silver hair kind of way, but drained, hollowed, as if Madison's unraveling had taken something from her too. She's struggling, she whispered. I know. And Nathan, he's moved out. I know that too. Her eyes searched mine for softness, for some opening. But I had none left to give. You want something from me, I said quietly. No, she lied. I just want to fix things. I walked toward the mantel. There were framed photos lined up like soldiers. All of Madison. Recitals, graduations, weddings. Not a single one of me. You can't fix what you refuse to see, I said. And now it's too late. I turned and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. A few days later the bombshell dropped. An old family friend, Mr. Holberg, a retired attorney, reached out to me. He had something he thought I should see. I met him at his office, where sunlight filtered through dusty blinds and everything smelled faintly of old books and coffee. I was your father's estate lawyer for decades, he said. He had a private account. No one knew about it. Not even Madison. He handed me a folder. Inside were documents, bank records, handwritten notes, even a few printed emails. The account had over $1.4 million. And I was the sole beneficiary. Froze. But why would he do this? Asked. Mr. Holberg leaned forward. He never said it directly. But years ago he asked me a strange question. Do you think a man can fix the way he loved his children? Even if it's too late. I didn't understand it then. Maybe I do now. I stared at the folder in disbelief. My father, who never looked up from his paper, who never once asked about my awards, my dreams, had left me something more valuable than money. He left me acknowledgement. Not in words, not in hugs, but in action. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that Madison didn't know a thing about this. I stepped outside into the blinding afternoon light. I had spent years trying to disappear. Now I was ready to be seen. Madison had taken Nathan. She had taken my place in the family. But this time she couldn't take this. I didn't go to her. Not yet. Let her stay in the dark a little longer. Instead I went home. Back to the city. Back to Jonathan. And I started planning. Not revenge. Not exactly. Just a reveal. Because sometimes, the sweetest justice doesn't come from lashing out. Comes from showing up. From being undeniable. From becoming the woman they can't ignore anymore. It's strange how life gives you back what you've been denied. Sometimes in the form of money, sometimes in the form of truth. That hidden account from my father. It was never about the $1.4 million. It was about proof. Proof that maybe, just maybe, he knew what he had done. What they had all done. And now he was trying to repair something in his own distant, cowardly way. But it was too late for repair. I wasn't the girl crying over a forgotten medal anymore. I wasn't the heartbroken woman standing in a kitchen watching her sister flirt with her boyfriend. I wasn't invisible. I was Deborah Buss. And I had something they didn't control. I spent the next few weeks building quietly. I used part of the inheritance to lease a stunning downtown gallery space for my next photography show. Unspoken, that's what I called it. A collection of raw portraits and landscapes, mostly black and white. A tribute to the things people never say. The emotions we bury. The pain we hide under smiles. Jonathan stood by me through every step, helping coordinate vendors, press releases, guest lists. He never asked for the spotlight. He only ever asked, "Are you doing this for yourself?" And I was. Every single frame was a chapter of my story. Not a sob story, but a survival one. 2 weeks before the show I got a call. From her. Madison. I let it ring 4 times before answering. I don't know why I answered. Maybe because I wanted to hear her voice quake. Maybe because I wanted to know how far she'd fallen. Deborah. Her tone was clipped, a little too controlled. Yes. I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me. Now you want honesty. Cut the attitude, she snapped, then caught herself and softened. Please. I said nothing. She continued. Is it true? About Dad's private account. There it was. The panic just beneath the surface. Someone had told her. I had a guess who, probably Mother. That woman had always folded under pressure. It's true, I replied calmly. He left it to me. There was a pause. Why? That doesn't make sense. You were barely around. I laughed. Not kindly. And yet somehow, I'm the only one he trusted in the end. You don't deserve that money. You didn't deserve Nathan. Didn't stop you. Sharp inhale. You think this makes you better than me? No, I said, my voice like steel. I don't need to be better than you, Madison. I just need to be me. That's enough now. And then I ended the call. The next morning, I received an email from her lawyer. She was contesting the will, claiming undue influence, mental incompetence, whatever she could dig up. I let out a quiet laugh, handed the file to my attorney, and told him, handle it. He nodded. With pleasure. Jonathan, meanwhile, just looked at me with that quiet admiration I had come to trust more than any words. How do you feel? He asked. Peaceful, I said. And it was true. Because the old me would have panicked. The old me would have cried in silence, questioned her worth, wondered if maybe she had imagined the injustice. But the new me. She had nothing to prove. And everything to protect. The night of my exhibit arrived like a thunderstorm after a dry season. The gallery buzzed with energy. Critics, artists, buyers, even a few local celebrities, all gathered to see what this new name in the photography world had created. I wore a sleek black jumpsuit, hair swept up, makeup subtle but precise. Jonathan's arm wrapped around my waist as we walked through the entryway. Flashbulbs popped. And then, she arrived. Madison. She was wearing a silver dress, designer of course, but it hung off her shoulders like desperation. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes betrayed her. They darted nervously, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. But this was my crowd, not hers. She walked up to me like nothing had happened. Lovely setup, she said with a plastic smile. Very authentic. Thanks, I replied. It's called unspoken. You should relate. A flicker of something passed over her face. Confusion, maybe pain. I didn't care. I turned to greet a guest, someone from a national arts magazine. As I introduced myself, I noticed Madison lingering nearby, trying to catch attention. But it wasn't her world. No one recognized her. No one cared. Then came the final blow. A tall woman approached me, elegant and sharp. She introduced herself as one of the city's top gallery curators. We're scouting for a national exhibit, she said. Your work, especially the portrait of the woman under the billboard, it's extraordinary. Have you ever considered international distribution? My chest tightened with gratitude. I'd love to talk more. Jonathan pulled me aside just as the curator stepped away. You see it now, don't you? He said. You've become what they never believed you could be. And he was right. By the end of the night, I had 2 gallery offers, 3 private commissions, and an invitation to speak at a Women in Art Summit. My career, my life was blooming. Madison left without saying goodbye. And I didn't look back. Madison didn't disappear after the gallery night. She couldn't. People like her don't fade quietly. They wither noisily, dragging others into their spiral. Within a week, I began receiving vague messages. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly reached out. Just checking in, they said, or, heard you've been doing well. What they really meant was, we heard about the money, about the success, about the gallery, and we're wondering how someone like you pulled it off. Then came the kicker. An invitation from my mother. Sunday brunch. At the old family home. Just a small gathering, the card read, written in her delicate handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. Jonathan read over my shoulder. You don't have to go. I know, I said. But maybe I want to. He gave me a look. To rub it in. I shook my head. No. To walk in with my head held high. To prove to myself that I'm not that invisible girl anymore. So I went. The house hadn't changed. Still sterile. Still obsessed with appearances. I rang the bell and waited. Madison opened the door. She was in loungewear. No designer clothes. No heels. Her hair in a messy bun. For the first time in my life she looked small. Deborah, she said. Her voice lacked its usual edge. Come in. I stepped inside. The room was already full of family. My mother was arranging plates like it was a royal luncheon. She looked up and froze. You came, she said. I gave her a tight nod. Jonathan followed me in, calm, imposing. The room fell quiet as he smiled politely at each relative. Madison sat across from me at the table, staring at her fork. I waited for the performance to begin. But it didn't. Instead, my mother spoke. I want to say something, she began, voice trembling slightly. To everyone. Conversations stopped. Even my uncle, who always dominated rooms, went quiet. I made mistakes, she said. With Deborah. I overlooked her. I let myself believe that only one child needed my attention. And now I see how wrong I was. Few gasped. I nearly dropped my glass. Madison looked up, startled. I've apologized to her privately, my mother added, glancing at me. But I wanted everyone here to hear it. Because this family has always swept things under the rug. I won't anymore. I didn't speak. Couldn't. For so long I had dreamed of this moment. This recognition. But now that it was here, I didn't need it the way I once did. It was strange. Liberating and sad all at once. After brunch, Madison pulled me aside on the porch. Her eyes were glossy. I didn't expect her to say all that, she said. I didn't either. She hesitated. Do you hate me? I looked out over the yard. The same one where we used to play tag, where I once scraped my knees and cried while she ran ahead, laughing, never noticing I'd fallen behind. No, I said softly. But I don't trust you. She nodded. Fair. There was a long silence. Dad loved you, she said, almost a whisper. He never said it. I think he really did. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because by now I had learned something invaluable. I didn't need love that was hoarded or hidden behind pride. I didn't need to beg for affection or compete for scraps of attention. Had love. From Jonathan. From my chosen family. From myself. Later that week, I got another call from Mr. Hallberg. He had found an old letter in my father's safe, addressed to me. It was handwritten, folded inside a weathered envelope. Umbra, if you're reading this, then I am no longer here. I won't pretend I was the father you needed. I saw you, always, but I didn't know how to love you the way you deserved. That's on me. I thought you were strong enough not to need me. But strength doesn't mean you shouldn't be held. I know I failed you. I hope this letter and what I've left for you helps in some small way. Not to fix things but to give you what I never could in life. Acknowledgement. I'm proud of you. Even if I never said it loud enough. I held the letter in my lap, my breath catching. Tears fell, not of grief but of release. My father was gone, but his silence had finally broken. When I showed Jonathan the letter, he pulled me into his arms. You were always worth seeing, he whispered. And in that moment, I realized something I had never truly believed before. I had never been the problem. I had only been the mirror they refused to look into. But now they couldn't look away. The day after reading my father's letter, something inside me settled. Not in a way that fixed everything, but in a way that told me I could stop searching for answers from people who were never equipped to give them. I folded the note gently and placed it in a small leather box where I kept my most sacred photographs, Snapshots of alleyways lit by lanterns, wrinkled hands of strangers, children laughing on fire escapes. Pieces of the world that had always spoken louder to me than my family ever did. But just when I thought the chapter had closed, the storm resurfaced. It came in the form of a legal summons. Madison wasn't done fighting. She had filed an official claim in probate court challenging the validity of the will and the private account. Her reasoning: mental incompetency and undue influence. As if my quiet absence for years was somehow manipulative. As if my very existence had bent our father's will to favor me. My attorney shook his head as he handed me the paperwork. "It's weak," he said. "Desperate. But she has money. Enough to make this annoying." "She had money," I corrected him. "Now she's bleeding it." Jonathan and I discussed it over dinner. "You could settle," he said gently. "Walk away with less but skip the noise." I sipped my wine calm. "No. I'm not doing that. This isn't about the money." He smiled. "I knew you'd say that." But then, a twist I didn't expect. Madison showed up at my studio. I was reviewing a new batch of prints when the door opened, and there she was, dressed in an oversized coat, sunglasses hiding most of her face. Her hands trembled as she removed them. "Don't get a restraining order," she said dryly. "I'm not here to throw anything." I didn't say a word, just waited. She looked around the room, at the framed photographs on the wall, the awards, the buzz of creativity. "This is you," she said. "This is really you. Yes. You made a life." I nodded once. She sat down on the couch near the window. "Nathan's gone," she said suddenly. "He packed up last week. He said I ruined everything. That I broke him." I leaned back against the table, arms crossed. "You want sympathy." "No," she admitted. "I want to know how you did it. How you became this." I studied her face. There were cracks now, fine lines, exhaustion beneath her eyes. For so long, she had hidden behind her beauty, her charm, her performance. But that performance had collapsed. "I stopped waiting for anyone to save me," I said. "Including you." Madison looked down at her hands. "When we were kids, Mom and Dad made it so clear who the favorite was. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even understand it. But I saw the way you looked at me. I knew you hated me." "I didn't hate you," I said quietly. "I wanted you to see me. That's all." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know how to fix this." I sighed. "You can't. Not like you think. You can't undo the past. But you can stop weaponizing it." Silence stretched between us. Then she stood. "I'm dropping the suit," she said. "Tell your lawyer. It's done." I blinked stunned. She walked toward the door, paused, and looked back. "I'm not asking for anything. I think I need to start over too." And then she was gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. Just felt still. Later that night I told Jonathan. He didn't look surprised. "She's tired," he said. "You're not her target anymore. You were her mirror. And now that she's cracked, she's starting to see herself." The next few weeks passed in a blur of gallery meetings, publication offers, and client shoots. My name was becoming known in circles I never thought I'd enter. But I didn't forget who I was or how I got there. One evening I received an unexpected email. From Nathan. Subject: "I'm sorry. Buddy. Umbra. I've spent years avoiding this, but I need to say it. I was a coward. I didn't leave you because I loved Madison. I left because I didn't know how to love someone real. You were real. And I wasn't ready. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life." I stared at the screen, unmoving. Jonathan walked in behind me, set a hand on my shoulder. "Everything okay?" I smiled, soft and certain. "Yes. Just letting go of another ghost." Then I deleted the email without replying. I had nothing to say to the past, because I was too busy living the future. They say success is the best revenge, but they never talk about what happens after the revenge is complete. When there's no one left to prove yourself to. No scores to settle. Just silence, and the life you finally built with your own hands. That's where I was now. My name, Deborah Buss, was etched on gallery walls, featured in local magazines, whispered in industry circles as the next breakout visual voice. The girl who once stood in the shadow of her sister now cast a light all her own. And not because of spite, not because of Madison, but because I had finally remembered who I was without them. But just as I found stability in my external world, something shifted internally. A slow ache, a low tremor I had ignored for months, suddenly demanded attention. Started with fatigue, then shortness of breath. I chalked it up to stress, overwork, late nights editing photographs. But when I fainted during a shoot in the middle of an open plaza, right in front of clients, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Jonathan rushed me to the ER. Hours of tests, wires, monitors. The diagnosis: an autoimmune condition. Manageable but chronic. A slow burn illness that would require long-term treatment. A rebalancing of everything I thought I had control over. I sat in the sterile room, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, my hands curled around the edge of the bed. It's not life-threatening, the doctor said. But it's life-changing. I thought I'd cry. But I didn't. I just sat there, stunned and hollow. When we got home, Jonathan tucked me into bed. He didn't talk about the illness, not at first. Instead, he played soft music, brought me chamomile tea, my favorite, and held me until I finally whispered, "Why now? After everything I've climbed through, why this?" He kissed my forehead. "Because you're strong enough now to face it." I took a medical leave from my gallery work, scaled back my shoots, let go of control in ways that terrified me. And to my surprise, the world didn't stop. People waited. Clients were kind. Opportunities paused, but they didn't vanish. I learned to rest. I learned to say no. I learned slowly that even in stillness I was enough. And then, Madison came back into my life. Again. But this time, she didn't come with a lawsuit or an apology or a demand. She came with vulnerability. "Can we meet?" her text read. "Just coffee. No agenda." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. But the other part, the healed, evolving part, understood something she hadn't figured out yet. So I met her. It was a quiet cafe downtown. No cameras. No spectators. Just two women who shared the same blood but vastly different scars. Madison arrived in a simple cardigan and jeans. No jewelry. No facade. "I heard about your diagnosis," she said gently. He nodded. "It's manageable." Long pause. "Deborah, I'm in therapy now." Blinked. "I started a few weeks ago," she added quickly. "After Nathan left, after the lawsuit, after everything fell apart. I couldn't recognize myself anymore. And the therapist asked me something that shook me." "What?" She asked me if I knew how to exist without admiration. Madison stared at her hands. "And I didn't." "You don't." "I've spent my whole life performing. For Mom. For Dad. For the world. I never knew who I was underneath the glitter." I sipped my coffee, watching her. I believed her. For the first time, I believed she was trying to understand herself, not manipulate me. She continued, "I don't expect us to be sisters. Not the way people imagine it. But if there's space in your life, even a small one, I'd like to earn back something." I set my cup down. "I'm not the same person anymore," I said. "And I can't forget what happened. But I'm open to seeing who you become." She smiled, tearful. "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," I replied. "It is." We didn't hug. We didn't take selfies or promise to call every day. We just sat there, in the wreckage of our old identities, quietly rebuilding something new, something honest. That evening back home, I stood by my window, watching the city pulse below. Jonathan was reading, his feet up, humming softly to himself. I picked up my camera, not for work, just for me. I pointed it at the mirror. For the first time, I didn't flinch. Click. The photo that stared back at me wasn't the girl who was forgotten, or the woman scorned. It wasn't the sister betrayed, or the daughter overlooked. It was me. A survivor. A storyteller. Soul in full bloom. Some stories don't end with grand applause or public reckoning. Sometimes the final chapter is written in quiet moments, in the way your chest softens when you breathe, in the stillness of your heart when no one else is watching. I never planned to become a symbol of survival. I didn't chase the spotlight. I didn't seek revenge through scandal or spectacle. All I ever wanted was to be seen. Truly, quietly seen. And in the end, that's exactly what I became. Not just visible but whole. The following year brought with it new challenges and unexpected rewards. My health stabilized under treatment. My schedule slowed, but it became richer, more intentional. I spoke at a women's summit titled, Invisible No More. My photography was featured in an international exhibit in Berlin. And I signed a book deal for a photo memoir, one that told my story through images and the fragments of journal entries I once kept hidden in shoeboxes. Madison kept her word. She didn't try to rush the process. She called every few weeks, sometimes just to share something from therapy, sometimes just to ask how I was feeling. We didn't talk about Nathan, or the lawsuit, or the betrayal. Those conversations would come one day, maybe. But for now, we were relearning how to coexist. It wasn't easy. Forgiveness never is. But it wasn't for her. It was for me. Because bitterness, I'd learned, is just grief that never found a place to land. One day, I received a letter from my mother. This time handwritten. Not a text, not a voicemail, not a guilt-soaked invitation. Umbra, I saw your interview. The one where you talked about shadows. I watched it 3 times. You were always light, Deborah. I was just too blind to see it. I was afraid that if I let you shine, Madison would feel dimmer. I didn't realize you both had your own stars. I don't expect anything in return. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Sorry. For everything. There were no tears when I read it. No sudden flood of emotion. Only a quiet nod to the past. A gentle acknowledgement that the hurt had finally been spoken aloud. I folded the letter, placed it in the same leather box where I kept my father's. Not because it fixed anything, but because it mattered. And then, one evening, something happened that marked the true close of my story. Jonathan and I were preparing for a small dinner party. Close friends, artists, a few people I admired. I had set the table, lit candles, opened wine. As I stepped back to admire the warmth of the room, he pulled me close, his hands resting gently on my waist. You know, he whispered, I used to think you were beautiful because of your art. Smiled. And now I know your art is beautiful because of you. I pressed my forehead to his chest, the sound of his heartbeat grounding me. I'd come so far. From the girl who stood in the living room with a forgotten medal, to the woman who now curated award-winning exhibits. From the sister who lost her boyfriend, to the wife whose partner loved her in silence and in storm. From the daughter who once packed a bag and left without looking back, to the woman who returned. Not to beg but to be. That night, after the guests had gone and the music had faded, I stepped out onto our balcony, camera in hand. I captured the city lights below. And then one last time I turned the lens toward myself. This time not to prove anything. Not to anyone. But to honor the journey. To freeze the moment. To say, I made it. Sometimes the greatest revenge is becoming the person they never believed you could be. Deborah Buss didn't just survive her family's neglect. She thrived in the aftermath, crafting a life built on authenticity, strength, and quiet resilience. Let this story remind you. Being overlooked does not mean you're unworthy. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You don't need their validation to rise. You just have to believe, truly believe that you are enough. If Deborah's story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that they matter. Comment below with your thoughts, subscribe for more stories like this, and never forget, your light belongs to you.